Hello, beautiful people. Thanks for coming back to my channel. My name is Roberto. I am a nurse practitioner, new grad, and I've been out of school now for like a year, and I'm still on the job search. I've had a couple of hit and misses when it comes to work, and I just wanted to kind of give you all a play-by-play on what's been going on a little bit with me, and also give you the top 10 things that you need to know before enrolling back in nurse practitioner school or enrolling in nurse practitioner school. But here goes. Now, I've compiled this particular list about the top 10 things that you should know before going back into nurse practitioner school, and I got this list from a couple of friends of mine, and a lot of these things I'm in complete agreement with them, and I'm not going to try to read this stuff off my head. You all are going to see me read from a spiral notebook because I can't remember all this stuff. Okay, all right. So number one, F&P versus acute care nurse practitioner. Before enrolling back into a particular program, you need to ask yourself, is there a need for the specific nurse practitioner that you're trying to become in that area? And what I mean is your area like oversaturated when it comes to and that's actually my number two. My number one and two spilled over into each other. Is your area oversaturated? And with NPs, meaning, do you need some hospitalist nurse practitioners in the area? And the hospitals in Texas and Louisiana, I don't know about some of the other states, but in Texas and Louisiana, they're not looking for family nurse practitioners for hospitalist jobs anymore. They want you to be an acute care nurse practitioner. So you really need to see if that's the type of environment that you want to work at in a hospital setting. You might not necessarily want to enroll in a family nurse practitioner program. You need to kind of focus maybe on an acute care nurse practitioner program so that the job opportunities that you're trying to go for are actually in the playing field for you, and you're not setting yourself up to be disappointed later after you graduate and start looking for hospital related inpatient acute care jobs, and then you're not qualified being a family nurse practitioner. So if you're thinking about going back to school, first figure out what type of NP that you want to become first. That specialty that you might want to go to, see if your degree will line up with it. Okay, number two, like I said, the saturation of the NP market. A couple of years ago, nurse practitioner being a relatively new and unknown thing, and it's kind of funny that even in 2020 nurse practitioners are still kind of unknown. If you ask the general public, what does a nurse practitioner do, some people still cannot tell you to this day, and other people are really up to date and informed on what a nurse practitioner is. So there's still this kind of level of, I don't want to say ignorance, but just they have not been exposed to the role of what a nurse practitioner is. So that's still our job now to educate the public on what exactly that we do. But anywho, saturation of the market. Number two, make sure that for whatever area that you plan on living in and residing in, that there is not an oversaturation in that particular field of nurse practitioner. Meaning, you might want to stay in, I don't know, let's just say, for instance, Dallas, Texas or something like that. And I know now in Dallas, Texas, there are a lot of jobs for acute care nurse practitioners available, as opposed to family nurse practitioners. So the job pickings are slim. So if you're going to stay in the Dallas area and you want to reside there, you might want to switch over and do acute care nurse practitioners. I have a lot of friends that live in the Dallas and the surrounding areas who say that now if they knew what they knew, they wouldn't have went to family nurse practitioner school. They would have opted for the acute care nurse practitioner program. So definitely check to see if your particular area has an oversaturation of a particular type of nurse practitioner, because that in and of itself can make and decide what type of nurse practitioner program that you want to enroll in and invest your time in and spend your money on. Okay, number three, a lot of people are not aware of psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners and their role and their salary. According to Indeed.com, and you can go to use some other sources as your references as well. But according to Indeed.com, the average salary of a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner is $124,000 a year. $124,000 a year versus $110,000 a year for a family nurse practitioner. Of course, those pay ranges are going to vary. The pay ranges are going to vary with your level of experience or whatnot, but that's a $14,000 difference right there. So honestly, now with me being a family nurse practitioner, a lot of people have informed me that I need to go back, and because I got my master's degree, I need to go back and get my doctorate of nursing practice while also pursuing a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner's degree, because me holding the family degree and the psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner degree will make me more marketable. And of course, having my doctorate is a good thing as well too. So I'm kind of contemplating that, but for right now, I'm just kind of resting on my laurels, so to speak. I'm good. But you might want to, if you're thinking about doing nurse practitioner, you might want to investigate psychiatric mental health, because here in Louisiana there is like a need for more psychiatrists, and the psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners fills that void of where the psychiatrists aren't. They can come in and kind of help oversee their patients, you know, mental related issues. And so yeah, please, before you enroll into a family nurse practitioner program, check into psychiatric mental health and see if there's something that you're thinking about. Number four, this is a huge one before you get back in school. Let me be the first to tell you that finding preceptors is extremely hard. I know people who live in certain states who are paying preceptors $1,000, $2,000 to precept them. That's one thing I don't like about nurse practitioner school. And a lot of schools have been read up about do not provide preceptors. They don't have contracts with local clinics or hospitals to send their students to. So people have to basically go out and beg from pillar to post for someone to take them. And if you can't find a preceptor, sometimes you're kind of stuck and stagnant because you can't go on in school without having a clinical practicum out the way. So contemplate, really think hard about the fact of if you'll be able to, in your area, if you enroll in school, will you be able to find a preceptor or not? Because that can make or break you. You could be paying school tuition, passing the lecture part of class, and then never getting a chance to do your practicum. So then you're just kind of stuck, waiting for somebody out there in the atmosphere to take you. For me, as an African American male in Louisiana, it was very difficult for me to find preceptors, because I think a lot of the times people really didn't look to see what I can offer, or they can look and see like, hey, we're going to take this opportunity to get another healthcare provider out there, so let's show this young man everything we can. They kind of look more of the aesthetic here. I'm still in the South, and it's just a reality that people would see me walk through the door, and I would try to inquire about if they had availability for me to train there, and I would immediately get these looks of like, what are you doing here? And one particular situation I'll give y'all, and I'll tell y'all because I don't want to go too far off my list, but I was in my family nurse practitioner rotation, and I was dressed up one day, freshly cut hair, my white lab coat on, looking nice, smelling good, dressed, starched down, Steve Madden shoes, you know. I always made sure at clinicals, I made sure I knew my stuff, but I made sure I was presentable all the time. The office staff would always compliment me on how I smelled and how I looked when I would come to clinic. But when I was at my family clinic, I took a lunch break one day and I walked down to the other end of the pavilion, and they had a women's health office there. They had 3 OBGYNs and 1 women's health nurse practitioner. So there was four individuals who could take me on as a student to precept when I got ready to get to my women's health rotation. So when I walked into the clinic, I spoke with one of the young ladies who worked at the front desk, and I told her who I was and what school I went to, and I needed a preceptor. And the young lady was like, okay, well, I don't think we have any students in here right now, so let me go talk to my office manager and bring her out so she can talk to you. So the young girl went and got her office manager. The office manager came out from the back, and she looked at me like I just had, you know, something smeared all over my face. And I asked her, I said, ma'am, I'm a family nurse practitioner student. I'm in my family part now, and I'm training at the other end of the pavilion with the other doctors, the well-known doctors down there, and I was looking for hours here. And she looked at me and she said, oh, I'm sorry, we already have a student here. We already have someone. I'm sorry about that. And this was in March, mind you. And I told her, I said, ma'am, I'm not looking to train right now. I'm just trying to secure a spot to train when I get to Women's Health this summer. And she said, oh yeah, this summer, that's when we have somebody right there. Like, she literally made it up in front of my face. Like, the lie was so thrown together, and I was so upset. But I had to think about again where I was, what environment that I was in. I just took that situation. I was upset about it, but I went and I found an African-American female OBGYN who was not taking students at the time. And I basically went up because I had a friend of mine that worked as a medical assistant for her. And my friend was like, Roberto, maybe she'll take you if you explain to her all the different problems you've been running into. So I went and spoke to this African-American female, and I told her about it, and she told me she had a lot of different things going on in her life with the death of her father and raising teenage sons, and she hadn't took a student in like years. But she heard the story and heard the hardships that I was going through trying to find someone who would precept me for my women's health rotation. And she said, regardless of however do it, we're going to make sure that you get those hours in. So that same day I was kind of lied to, and right in my face, I went over. God saw fit to take me over to another situation to work with this other lady, this other OBGYN that's been in practice for 30 some years. And I learned a lot from her, and I had an enjoyable experience as well. I felt like I was just blocked from being in that situation. Maybe it was for the best. But anywho, I don't want to keep going on my soapbox about that. The next thing that I want to talk about, number 5, is that one of my friends wrote the amount of papers that you will have to write. For me, I am a person who loves to write, and I love to research different things as well too. So the papers really wasn't an issue for me, but some people just kind of hated writing papers or whatnot. For me, they came naturally. I just put on some music, get a glass of wine, and I can have a whole paper, do my intake citations, and then my reference page. I'm good. But if you don't like writing papers, you might not want to come back to nurse practitioner school, because we're built on the foundation of research and proving things and trial and error. So they definitely stretch the research portion of pretty much every nurse practitioner program. Number 6, you need to know that you need to know if you have a good support system or not. That can make or break you when going through school if you don't have a good support system. My dean of nursing, the dean of the nursing program, she told us when I originally started my program back in the summer 2017 that if you didn't have any children at that time, don't have any. If you were not in a relationship, don't get in one, because this is going to be your life for the next couple of years. And she was so accurate with it. I tried to have a couple of little relationship-ish situations go on, and I never really had time in school. So yeah, make sure that your support system is good, that you have someone to help you watch your kids, pick your kids up from school, because you're going to be in class for long hours. If you go to a physical location, you're going to be writing a lot of papers, you're going to be going to your clinical practicum, you're going to be doing all of these things, and it can get overwhelming sometimes. So if you don't have a good support system, it really can make or break you. So, you know, if you don't have a good support system, try to fix a couple of things in your life before enrolling back into school, because school itself is overwhelming enough, and you don't want to just get to where you just kind of just over it or whatnot. 7, is finding a job, and that kind of goes back to some of the things that we were talking about as far as making sure that your specialty was something that you wanted to do, and make sure that your specialty that you want to do wasn't oversaturated in your area. But finding a job, let's talk about that for a second. Finding a job. For me, I was told as a African American male in Louisiana that it was going to be next to impossible for me to find a job, especially being a new grad at that. And I took what people told me, and I still didn't let that kind of like discourage me from still being positive. I was like, you know what, I'm going to push through all of this. I hear what these people are saying, but they don't know me. You know, I'm a good worker, I'm a good like positive person, so I know what I can bring to a job. So regardless of what all these people are saying, all these difficulties I'm going to have finding a job, hey, that's not going to be me. So when the process of me actually looking for a job came into play, I made sure that I got my CV, you know, my resume all decked out nicely and all professional is, you know, all professionally formatted as possible. And I started the process of applying online and going into a couple of interviews here and there. And the interviews would go okay, but I always thought that the interviews would come down to who had the most experience or not. So if it was always 5 brand new MPs and 5 experienced MPs, chances are that they would side with one of the 5 experienced people before they would dip into the pool of the brand new people. And hey, that's understandable or whatnot, but it was like, you know, it was kind of discouraging to keep going on interviews and hearing like, we like you, but you never really hear back from those people. And that was here in Louisiana. When I would apply at different places in Texas, I would fill out applications and it might be 5 months, 4 months before you heard anything about that job, and it would just be a, I'm sorry, we have, you know, we found someone else for the job. Feel free to apply for another position when it's posted, that type of thing. I actually went to Grand Prairie one day that's about 2.5–3 hours away from Shreveport. I went to a job fair that was listed as being like this big expo, this big Essence Festival type thing that was going to have a lot of MP job opportunities there and recruiters from different hospitals there to recruit people. Me and my friend went to that place. There was not one person there from any hospital that was hiring a nurse practitioner. So it was basically a trip that we took that day that was a complete bust in order to make my friend laugh, because she was a single mom. She's a single mom of 2 boys who had to kind of switch her whole schedule around for us to drive there for that job fair that we were hoping that we would have, you know, an opportunity. This was one of my friends I graduated with, mind you, by the way. But we drove all the way down there, and she had to move her whole life around for us to get down there and actually have no, you know, opportunities. And I ended up meeting another nurse practitioner there who was a new grad, and she had been working for 3 months with, actually like a month and a half with a neurology doctor. And she told me that they just told her like 2 or 3 weeks earlier that, hey, it's not working out, and they let her go and without really any other explanation. So she had let her job of 6 years being like an OR nurse just kind of go to the side because she was moving on up in her mind with her career. And then after like a little over a month of her training with these new people, they let her go without any explanation. So it was just crazy. So it was just ridiculous. So I basically, to make a long story short, through the process of networking with a couple of people, I was introduced to another MP that I had met when he was rounding for an internal medicine or a family medicine doctor on the floor at the LTAC that I currently work at. And this guy, we met and we reconnected at a nurse practitioner meeting, and he introduced me to a young lady who was working with a prominent urologist in the Shreveport area, and they were looking for a male nurse practitioner to join her practice with her doctor. And at this point, I had a few letdowns that happened, and I was kind of discouraged, but this seemed like a good opportunity enough. The young lady I met at the nurse practitioner meeting that I was introduced to from the male nurse practitioner who I had met working at my LTAC, he was a new nurse practitioner, but he knew that I was a nice guy and he wanted to show me to some people for a job opportunity. So I met this new lady. I'm just gonna say her name was Erin. I met Erin at the nurse practitioner meeting, and Erin told me that her doctor in this area, I'm just making up a name, his name is Dr. Howard. And Erin told me that Dr. Howard was this like Ivy League medical school, some trained doctor. He was very renowned. He was a urologist in this area that was piloting all these new surgical procedures that a lot of other doctors in the area haven't even touched yet. And this guy had a podcast, and you know, that he has, and this website. Like, he's very, very renowned. And she was telling me that they needed a nurse practitioner male to join the practice because the male patients respond well, sometimes talking about issues with erectile dysfunction and impotence with another guy instead of a pretty woman. So that's why I was needed to join the practice. Well, she got my information. She told me the next morning the doctor would be reaching out to me, and I was like, yeah, because at this time I had so many letdowns and so many dead ends. I was trying not to get my hopes too high, and it was about 4 months past graduation and no luck with finding work yet, even though some of my other classmates had already got, you know, set up jobs before they graduated. Anyway, long story short, the next morning the doctor started writing me like crazy, texting me $signs, telling me he was so ready for me to join his practice, and he ended up wanting to set a meeting up with me. And I was excited and kind of intimidated because I'm like, this doctor wants a little old me, you know, that went to my HBCU and just got my degree, and you want me to join this big booming practice. Can I keep up with you all? But I gave myself a positive pep talk, and I agreed to meet with him. And he actually took me through a surgical procedure with him, introduced me to his whole OR staff as his new nurse practitioner on the very first day. And I went through a penile implant with him and the team, and it was a good experience. After that, he told me I can meet him the next day. We toured the clinic that he was going to let me work and reside over, and put my name on the outside of the clinic, and that be my clinic. And we ended up, I eventually signed with the hospital, and I took the job, making like a 6-figure salary. It was like a 6-figure offer for me to make, and it was just like a dream come true. It's so many different moving parts to this story. Maybe I'll give it a thorough explanation later, but I agreed to take the job from the doctor after he courted me for so long. And this is just, names have been changed to protect the guilty, but after Dr. Howard courted me for so long about the job, I agreed to take it. Well, he introduced me to his medical assistant, and she was an African-American female that he introduced me to. And immediately it was like she was sizing me up, so to speak. You know how sometimes we have that crab in a barrel mentality. And she sized me up, and she ended up adding me on Facebook at this particular time. I accepted her on my Facebook page, and I regret doing that because she was going through all of my posts, peering into my life, looking at every single thing I posted, and just being very intrusive. And the doctor actually invited me out to a dinner to meet the rest of his cohorts. Everyone was sweet to me. Everyone was nice and inviting. Everybody was so positive about me joining their practice, and any questions or concerns, they gave me their phone numbers to reach out to them. And when it got around to the African-American female that was at the table at the luncheon with us, when the doctor was showing me off to the rest of his counterparts and business partners, she looked at me and told me, or asked me rather, what are you looking to get? What do you hope to gain by taking this job? I mean, what are you here? Like, I know what the doctor like and what he doesn't like. And she was very possessive over her doctor. And I didn't know at this level of like education and being professionalism that I would be forced to be interacting in some bad situation like this. The only 2 African Americans at the table, this lady is going at me. And I felt like that she was the token black person at the practice, and that my presence there would would somehow lessen her role. And she told me at the table, I know what he likes. I've worked with him for 16 years and all this other stuff. It's just a crazy story. But needless to say, when she asked me what do I hope to get or gain from taking this job, I talked to her and said, I hope to gain experience and comfortability in my role as a nurse practitioner. That's what I hope to get. That's what I hope to gain. And you asking me what I hope to get and gain right now is like asking somebody on the very first date, you see us getting married in the next year or two? Because if not, I can just get up and go. It's a very direct question, and it was kind of inappropriate as well. But I told her about that. I let her know that she kind of was, I could see her going through my Facebook page and looking at all my posts. And I signed my collaborative practice agreement. I got up and I left the table, and I left there after we ate and talked, and I met everybody with the intentions on starting with the doctor and working with him in January of this year. And after I signed my contract and everything, they called me about a week and a half later, someone from physician services from the hospital, and canceled my job out of nowhere. They told me they canceled it because of budgeting, but they had created my job from scratch. So it was not canceled because of budgeting. It was canceled because this particular, another person of color, the African American medical assistant woman that worked with the doctor, she didn't like me, and since she kind of had his ear after all that whining and dining and courting of me and showing me off to everybody and telling me how much I could make, and I really was needed at his practice, they canceled my job with no rhyme or reason, and they end up canceling my contract I signed as well and paid me off. So my very first nurse practitioner job, I never even started it, honestly. Like, it just was pulled from underneath me from kind of a jealousy situation. But finding a job after all of that wordy monologue I gave you can be very difficult, and it really can be difficult for African American male here in Louisiana. So for right now, I'm contemplating relocating, but for right now, I'm trying to hang out here for a little while. So next, the number 8, again, what I spoke about, finding a particular hospital system that has a willingness to be open to new grads. If you are in an area where hospitals do not respond well to new grads, you might want to, before you enroll in school, figure out if you're ready to make that move, and uproot yourself to another area that are more inviting to new grads. So you need to know if there's going to be a willingness to accept new grads in your area. If you're planning on staying in the area, you need to know that before you go to NP school. Number 9, you need to research the billing and coding process. That can be a lot for some people to handle. So if you start researching the billing and coding process earlier before you get into nurse practitioner school, it'll be a smoother transition for you, in my opinion. Learning how to write up different things, the ICD 10 code processes and everything. That's something that you really need to know. How to bill and get adequate reimbursement by learning how to bill and code correctly. So start looking at that a little bit before you actually get back into nurse practitioner school. And the last one, last but not least, one of my friends wanted to say, know that that there can be a little bit on some MD's end of jealousy and resentment toward new nurse practitioners or nurse practitioners in general, because they kind of look at nurse practitioners as minute docs, meaning when you join a practice and you might be full of docs there and there might be 1 or 2 NPs, and the patients respond better to the nurse practitioners, sometimes they can elicit a little bit of jealousy on the MD's end, because they're thinking, I have all these years of medical school training and you really want to go see a nurse practitioner, really? So they can kind of create animosity in the field in your office when you're a brand new person, and if you can't handle that, that might can chase you off. Because I know some new nurse practitioners who've been chased off because they couldn't stand that competition and that energy that some of the doctors were throwing at them, you know, being new people and gauging how much they knew. It's a learning experience, so you don't know everything, but when patients respond to you, and it's a good thing, it's kind of off-putting when someone you work alongside is upset with you because of that. And it's like, how dare they want to see you instead of that? So know that that will be, and it could be a potential problem. So know that that might be an issue when you start off your new career in nurse practitioner. But anywho, those are the top 10 things, and I hope I didn't talk a little bit too much, and I hope I put some things in you all's mind to think about before you enroll back into school. I still love what I do. I love being a floor nurse. I still love the extra education I got being a family nurse practitioner, and I'm hopeful that something else is going to come about because I know what God has for me is for me, and nobody can take those situations or opportunities away from me. But definitely think long and hard before enrolling back into school, and make sure this is something that you want to do, because this is not for the weak or the faint of heart. It is kind of dog eat dog out there a little bit, and you all really need to be adequately informed about, you know, everything before you decide to leap and invest your time and your money into furthering your education. So I thank you all for sticking with me and watching this video. Any questions you have, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you want me to talk about, and I will see you good people later. Bye.